Hi, so this presentation is for week 3 and it's about Mary Magdalene. So before we talk specifically about Mary Magdalene, let's just look a little bit more about what life was like for a Jewish woman at this time. So as you can imagine, a lot of their rights and privileges were extremely limited compared to what we're familiar with today. So they were to be unobserved in public, basically just kind of disappear in public. Before marriage, they were only to answer to their father and should not leave home at all. And then after marriage, they would answer to their husband as if they were a slave. Most were illiterate, meaning they could not attend school or study the scriptures or read the scriptures. They could not hold public office, could not testify if it contradicted their husband's testimony, and a woman's witness could not be admitted into legal proceedings, so they could not be considered a credible witness. And their purpose or their value was mainly just to procreate, just to have children. So let's talk about Magdala real quick. So this is the town that most scholars believe that Mary came from. And so it's on the western side of the Sea of Galilee. And it was at this crossroads between Capernaum, which was above it, and Tiberias, which was below it. So this means it was a, let me move my head real quick. This means it was a prosperous fishing village, and it was mainly known for salted fish. Today, it's a tourist site, and like I said, this is most likely where Mary Magdalene was from. So her last name wasn't Magdalene, it just means, or Magdalene, it just means that she was of the city of Magdala. Okay. So what do we know about Mary Magdalene? Well, from the Bible, we know that she had 7 devils cast from her. She was a devoted disciple of Christ. We know that she was one of the women who financially supported Christ's ministry, and that she witnessed Christ's crucifixion and the burial of his body, and then she also saw Christ as a resurrected person. So what's interesting about Mary Magdalene is, I think one of the things that makes her stand out is her reputation. So let's look a little bit about where that came from. So in 591 AD, so this is hundreds of years after Mary Magdalene was on the earth, the Pope, the Catholic Pope at the time, he took 3 different women in the Bible and put them all together into one. So this made Mary Magdalene a prostitute as a result. Then in 1969, the year I was born, which tells you just how long this took, the Pope at the time, Pope John Paul VI, removed this identification from Mary Magdalene as being a prostitute. But it still remains culturally to this day among the Catholics and lots of people around the world. So then in 2016, Pope Francis said that she is to be referred to as the Apostle of the Apostles. So basically one who served or helped the apostles of Christ. And then took her memory from just memorial status up to feast status. Now this is all within the Catholic Church, not within our church. But I think it kind of shows this the changes of Mary Magdalene's reputation through the centuries, which, as you can imagine, also filtered into non-Catholics and beliefs outside of the Catholic Church. So there's a legend that says she traveled to France, and there's also a legend that says she was married to Jesus, which might be a legend you're quite familiar with today. So let's look at this idea of the 7 devils being cast from her. So in the New Testament, it's using this Greek word, which means, I hope I could say it right, daimonian. So this Greek word is defined as a divine power, deity or divinity, It's a spirit, meaning it's and it's inferior to God, but superior to men. And it was an evil spirit, or the messengers and ministers of the devil. So in our religion, we have this belief that these people exist. People probably isn't the right word to say, because they're not human. They don't have a body for them. But we know that Satan had followers that went with him, and that they work under him. And so this idea of demons or evil spirits isn't foreign to us in our religion. So I wanted to pull this quote out from Bruce R. McConkie, which I thought was interesting. How often it is that the chosen and elect of God wrestle with physical, mental, and devilish infirmities as they cleanse and perfect their souls, preparatory to the ministerial service they are called to render. In other words, Mary Magdalene is not the only one who experienced this turmoil as a precursor before she became a disciple, or performed ministerial services to the kingdom and to God. So she's not unique in that regard, which I thought was interesting. So I also just before I jump to this, I just want to say, if you're interested in this idea of being possessed by demons and mental health and what does all of that mean, I do have some sources in the study helps where I have some articles I have found about this connection between being possessed by demons and being suicidal and depressed and anxious and all of that, and what others have said about those two connecting. Okay, so the big question a lot of people speculate on or wonder is, was Mary Magdalene married to Jesus? So any accounts about these two being married to each other, they come from fictional sources. The Bible never mentions that these two are married. And I just want to share with you what the church's stance is on this. And it is the belief that Christ was married has never been a part of official church doctrine. It is neither sanctioned nor taught by the church, and it's not something I would ever teach in this class either. While it is true, there are a few church leaders in the mid-1800s who expressed their own opinions on the matter. It was not then, and it is not now, church doctrine. And this comes from Dale Bills, who was in 2006, who was the spokesman for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So as members of this church, we do not promote, preach, or speculate that Jesus was ever married, and definitely not to Mary Magdalene, of course, right? Okay. So another thing that I found is this idea that Jesus didn't want Mary Magdalene to touch him. And so there's just lots of theories and ideas and things about it. But I find that when Jesus ever says something that just doesn't make sense to us at the time, the best thing to do is first look to see how it's been translated in multiple ways. Because remember, Jesus didn't speak English. And so when we put English words to his words, there's room to misunderstand what it was he was saying. So, in the version that we're familiar with, he says, "Touch me not." So there's other translations based on the way it's written in originally in the New Testament. One is, "Do not hold on to me. Do not cling to me. Cease clinging to me. Stop touching me. And don't fear to touch me." And as you can see, all of these different phrases have very different implications and very different thoughts. So I just encourage you, when you go to Bible Hub or go to Bible Gateway or somewhere, and when you're reading this, look and see all the different ways that this phrase has been interpreted into English by different translators. Okay, so when it comes to the story of Mary Magdalene, let's look at, what did Jesus do? And something that I find so significant about Jesus and his interaction with Mary Magdalene is, one, he did something very rare in that he gave women an equal opportunity as men for discipleship. So like we say, they weren't to be observed in public. They pretty much stayed at home. This brings Mary Magdalene out and about, traveling village to village. So this gave her the freedom from that bondage that society put on women, and she could now participate in society freely. Another thing that Jesus did is he helped to break down these social, cultural, and economic, spiritual, emotional, and mental barriers that society had placed on women. And he removed those barriers by having Mary Magdalene support him and be a disciple to him. So, as a result, this now gives Mary Magdalene freedom to be a leader and to give credible testimony to the men that Jesus lives. And she's testifying to those who are in the highest circles of church leadership. And that is just such a powerful message for us today. So, one thing I want you to think about is, what are some of the cultural and social norms that we can challenge today so that we can be more like Jesus?